So I have sketched an outline for the drawing using an HB pencil onto cold pressed watercolour paper, 300 grams, and I put some washi tape around the border. So it will leave a lovely sort of white border at the end of the painting, and it's a nice way of presenting your work if you're not going to frame it. So for step 2, I am going to paint some pale yellow washes in the sky and also on the fields. So I'm using Hansa Yellow Light and Hansa Yellow Deep. Alternative colours can be found in the description. I'm wetting the sky with a large 1-inch brush with clean water, and I'm wetting right down to the bottom of the painting. And in watercolour we work light to dark, so I'm just going to paint on the palest washes first, but also paint the sky. So I am starting off with the palest wash, the Hansa Yellow Light, using my size 10 brush, painting the fields here on the right hand side, wet into wet, adding a little bit of the Hansa Yellow Deep. So when I look at the photograph, I'm just trying to sort of gauge what the colours are kind of underneath. So this is kind of an underpainting. We're painting the lights here, the light areas. So if you've got a white area, a white house or something like that, you would paint around it. When you're painting a large area, use a large brush. Always keep loading your brush as well. So I'm painting the sky here, wet into wet with the Hansa Yellow Light with my size 10 brush, wet into wet. Getting a little bit of that Hansa Yellow Deep, slightly thicker, slightly creamier, painting the top left part of the sky, damp into wet. I want to leave the horizon area pale, so I haven't actually painted the horizon. So I've mixed up Pyrrol Red with the Hansa Yellow Deep, and I'm painting that on the top left part of the sky, pretty much damp into damp. I've turned the painting upside down. I'm just collecting the puddle there and letting the paint sort of run off on the top part of the sky, leaving the bottom part of the sky paler. I'm also adding a little bit more of the Hansa Yellow Light there on the bottom part of the sky, and then collecting any puddles there at the top so they don't run back into the painting. And I'm actually tilting my painting now, allowing the paint to run down as well. And I'm going to add a little bit of the yellow there, the Hansa Yellow Light, right at the top of the middle of the sky there, just to add a bit more colour, but keeping the horizon area lovely and light. To create that lovely sunlit effect, I'm just adding a little bit more orange here. That's the red and yellow mix, here and there, damp into damp, using my size 10 round brush. Adding a little bit more of that orange colour in the foreground, damp into damp. I'm going to allow my painting to dry. For step 3, I am going to paint the distant trees using a very dilute cerulean blue. I'm using my size 8 round brush, and I'm painting wet on dry, a thin wash of the cerulean. I've swapped to my size 6 brush just so that I can get more smaller details at the top of the wash there, using the tip of the brush. And I'm just going to work left to right, loading the brush every couple of strokes to make sure I can glide this wash, this transparent wash, across these background trees. So it's a thin wash. I'm going to let that dry, and I'm actually going to paint a yellow wash over the top of it later to glaze it, to make this look like a green colour. So when you do glazing in watercolour, you apply a transparent wash on top of a dried wash, a dried transparent wash in most cases. And what happens is, for instance, with blue, when you put a yellow on top, it turns the blue to a greeny blue. And that's what I love about watercolour. When you sort of paint transparent washes on top of the other, it can change the colour. It can change the look of the painting as well. So I'm just working my way along here. I'm painting around the building, and it's all wet on dry. And as you can see, I'm loading my brush each time, using the tip of the brush to create the sort of detail at the top of the trees, and working my way along. and I'm painting wet into wet, that limey green colour with my size 6 round brush. Sort of kind of diagonal sort of strokes there and some horizontal strokes just to kind of show the sort of field markings there. So again, starting off with that lighter colour, going into the mid-tone now, the cobalt turquoise with the yellow, painting damp into damp. So I'm half closing my eyes just to see some of the sort of more darker marks in the field and just painting them damp into damp, leaving gaps of the lighter underpainting. Mixing up some burnt sienna now and painting that damp into damp in the foreground area. And again, just half closing my eyes and painting that lovely warm colour just here and there where I can see it pop up in the foreground of the photograph as well. For step 4, I'm going to glaze some yellow onto those background trees. So I'm making a dilute puddle of yellow, making sure my painting is thoroughly dry. I'm glazing this yellow over the cerulean blue. And look, by magic, you don't see yellow, you don't see blue, you see a light limey green. It's a lovely pale sort of sun-drenched colour that I wanted to capture in this painting. That's what I loved about this photograph. So again, I'm working my way along, wet on dry, loading my brush, painting around the building, that lovely yellow colour. I'm painting more sort of markings and shapes here in the foreground fields, damp into damp, using my size 10 brush. As you saw there, loading the brush and painting this mid to darker tonal value here and there, again half closing my eyes, mixing up some more the Hansa yellow light with my size 6 brush, just pushing some of that yellow into some of that sort of mid green there. And I'm painting it at the top of the field there as well. We've got that lovely sort of light yellow colour. So for step 5, I'm going to paint the middle distance. So I'm mixing up a big puddle of sap green. I'm also mixing up a little bit more of the phthalo green with some yellow. And again, I'm working wet on dry to begin with my size 8 brush. And I'm painting this transparent wash sort of below those distant trees, below the house, and working my way along. Keep loading your brush and work your way down to the top of the next field. Using the tip of the brush, I've gone to my size 6 brush and I'm just loading, sort of catching that wash just above and sort of gliding it down. Make sure your paint is the same consistency as what's on the paper, and that way you'll be able to work seamlessly along. So it's always good to keep loading your brush and painting. So paint and load, and that way you'll get a really nice consistency of paint. I'm mixing up here some yellow with the phthalo green here, lots more yellow, and I'm painting wet on dry. So just varying that green using cobalt turquoise with a little bit of the Hansa yellow light, a nice big puddle. And I'm going to work on that larger central field using my size 10 round brush, just adding a little bit more of the phthalo green there with the Hansa yellow light. So it's a really bright green that will come forward. And I am painting wet on dry up to that damp field above. If you're worried about bleeding into the field, just leave a small gap. It is quite warm in my studio today, so it did dry very quickly, the field above. So I'm just kind of, again, loading the brush, large area, large brush, and painting down to the top of that foreground field, which is dry. And I just want to paint sort of some slightly darker marks, wet into wet, in that central field, using my size 8 round brush. I've added a little bit of phthalo blue as well, just to make the markings a little bit stronger. And it's just to create a little bit more interest and details as we come forward in the painting. So I'm just using the tip of my brush to create some thinner marks there as well. For step 6, I'm going to paint some of the cypress trees, the hedgerow, and some of the light washes on the building. I've used some phthalo green here with a pinch of yellow, and I'm using my size 8 round brush, working my way along. Just painting some smaller sort of hedgerows and bushes here as well, added a little bit more yellow to those. So just varying the colours as I go. So painting the slightly darker cypress trees here, using my size 6 round brush, and I've used phthalo blue with a little bit of yellow. And just take your time with these. They're such beautiful trees. That's what I love about the Tuscan countryside. These sort of very characteristic cypress trees and those beautiful fields with that lovely light. So just painting the tree trunks here, and I've used a little bit of the red and yellow mixed together with the green, and adding a little bit of dark here and there to the cypress trees. Just mixing up a little bit more of the Cobalt turquoise with a pinch of yellow, and just sort of painting some of the hedgerow wet on dry. Now you can vary these colours, so you could use a phthalo green, phthalo blue with a pinch of yellow, and just work your way along. I've actually added a little bit of orange to that as well, just to warm up that colour, just to create a little bit of variety. I'm painting the rooftop here with burnt sienna with a pinch of Pyrrol Red, wet on dry. I'm just using a clean damp brush just to make the right hand side of the rooftop lighter, because the light's coming from the right. Mixing up phthalo blue with the burnt sienna. And I'm painting a little bit of shadow on the building, very dilute, wet on dry. The shadows on the left as the light's coming from the right. I took a bit of excess paint off there just to control the amount of paint on my brush, and I'm just leaving the right hand side of the building light with that lovely warm light, as you can see there. I've mixed up ultramarine with a little bit of Hansa yellow deep, and I'm painting the cypress trees at the top of the field here, kind of coming into the middle ground area, so they're warmer and bigger. So make the cypress trees sort of pointy at the top and wider at the bottom there, and vary the heights of the trees. Adding a little bit more of the Hansa yellow light, I'm actually going to paint some bushes and hedgerows here, wet on dry, and adding a little bit of a darker green, damp into damp at the bottom there, so the light's above. And just adding a few more sort of little bushes and trees here and there, using a touch of burnt sienna as well, just to kind of vary the colours, adding a bit of warmth here and there, wet on dry. I'm going to paint the hedgerow just beneath those cypress trees on the left, wet on dry with my size 6 brush. Again, keep loading that brush and work your way along. And I'm just sort of finessing here, tidying up the edge using my size 6 round brush. I wanted to create a little bit more interest in the sort of middle ground, foreground area. So I have mixed up here lots of sort of darker sort of colours, burnt sienna mixed with phthalo blue, a little bit of ultramarine with the yellow, and I'm painting sort of some trees and bushes here on the right hand side, wet on dry at the top of that foreground field. A little bit of dark at the bottom of those trees, damp into damp. I'm using my size 6 round brush, and it's just to create a little bit more interest and also to create depth in my painting as well. So adding a little bit more burnt sienna on the right hand side here, damp into damp, still using that size 6 brush to create texture and a little bit of detail as well. I'm using a kebab stick here just to scratch in sort of darker marks into the trees there to make them look like tree trunks, but also to lift off to make lighter tree trunks as well. So I'm glazing using a thin wash of ultramarine mixed with a pinch of phthalo blue and a pinch of yellow. And I'm just adding a little bit more dark actually at the bottom, really can you see how that yellow feel comes out? So it's sort of really manipulating your painting to create that look. So you've got that lovely light yellow coming forward from that foreground field. And I'm just adding a few more little bushes here on the right hand side, damp into damp with my size 6 brush to finish off this stage. For step 7, I'm going to paint more cypress trees in the distance and middle distance, and I'm also going to paint some darks and details on the building as well, the star of the show, my focal point. So I've mixed up here sort of mid-green, you can use phthalo blue and yellow, and I'm just sort of painting little bushes and smaller cypress trees here using the tip of my size 6 brush, working my way along here, wet on dry. Varying the heights of the trees. I'm pretty much kind of following the photograph. I love all those trees there in the distance. Do vary your greens, maybe add a pinch more yellow, a little pinch more blue, maybe a different blue, a different green, just to get sort of slightly different effects, just to create more interest. Painting a little bit more detail here on the left hand side as well, wet on dry, using my size 6 brush. I'm just painting in the windows of the building here using ultramarine and burnt sienna with the tip of my size 4 round brush, and painting some shadows underneath the eaves there, wet on dry. And for the final stage, step 8, I'm going to finish off with darks and details on the building, creating some textures and details in the field, and a couple more cypress trees to finish off. So I'm just adding a few more darks to the windows, below the eaves, and to the cypress trees around the building there, using ultramarine with a pinch of yellow. And I'm going to work on the foreground, again wetting it gently. Remember, clean water, soft brush. I'm going to use the plastic wrap technique to create details and textures on the field. It's a really effective technique, especially for fields. So mixing up here sap green with phthalo blue, nice big puddles of dark green. Have fun with it. Mixing up here phthalo green, I've got a little bit of the phthalo blue there as well, and really sort of watery rich darks, a little bit of Hansa yellow light here, again a big puddle. And I am going to paint these washes wet into wet, still leaving gaps for my underpainting as well. Glide those washes with a soft brush gently onto the surface so you don't disturb the paint underneath. A little bit more of the phthalo blue here, so it's a lovely dark sort of blue green. A little bit of ultramarine as well, that into the Hansa yellow light. Applying the plastic wrap now, thinner at the top part, wider at the bottom, again to create depth in the painting. So once it's dry, peel it off. I always love this part. It creates lovely sort of markings, as you can see. So I'm peeling off my washi tape as well. Leaves a lovely white border, and it gives me time to assess to see if I need to do any more to my painting. And I forgot to paint a couple of the trees there, which I'd drawn in previously. So I'm mixing up sap green with some ultramarine. I'm using my size 6 round brush, and I'm going to paint these cypress trees to the right hand side. I must say I quite like my painting, but I thought I'd just add them in anyway to create depth. So they're slightly darker, and I'm being quite careful here, and I'm just painting this wet on dry. And you can see how they come forward. I'm painting one slightly taller than the other, and here is the finished painting. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial as much as I enjoyed painting it. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments section below. If you would like to support the content that I create here on YouTube and get access to my exclusive watercolour tutorials, extended watercolour tutorials, downloadable outline sketches and PDF documents with progress photographs, why not think about joining my Patreon membership? Details about the membership can be found in the description below. And remember, if you would like to know more about my watercolour retreat to Tuscany in 2026, please see the description below. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. Happy painting. Bye for now.